You and I have both been told that the jab is the most important punch in boxing. But what we haven't been told, or maybe what you haven't been told, is that the jab can become predictable. And as a fighter, a boxer, becoming predictable can be dangerous to you in the ring. In this video, I want to walk you through 3 different ways you can execute your jab so it becomes less predictable and becomes more effective when you're using your jab. The jab is a multifaceted punch. It can do a whole lot of things. You can use it to set up punches. You can use it to break your opponent's guard down. You can use it to keep your opponent at bay. It can be a hammer, it could be a scalpel, it could be anything in between those 2 things. But the minute your jab becomes predictable, it becomes less and less effective. And the problem with becoming predictable is that whether you know it or you don't know it, once you create a rhythm, and I'm not referring to you want to get into a rhythm, but once you create a rhythm, meaning that you're going to do the same thing over and over, you can become exposed in the ring. And especially with the jab, because although the jab is an extremely important punch, it's what most people lead with in the boxing ring. And when you lead with something all the time, and you do it repetitively, meaning that you're going to do the same thing over and over with that punch, you're going to become predictable because you created a rhythm doing the exact same thing. And then you become exposed and you get taken advantage of. So we're going to focus on the first thing that you can do to become less predictable with your jab and execute it more effectively. So when you're in the ring and you're working on your jab, please, please, please stop using the jab only as a double jab. The double jab is an effective punch combination. It's great. But when you only use your jab to set up a double jab, it becomes predictable. And I love the double jab. It's an extremely effective setup for maybe your left hand. Maybe you're going to go to the body. Maybe you're going to throw a lead hook after that double jab. But for most beginners and some intermediate fighters and even some very experienced fighters, they start throwing a jab as a double jab religiously. And then what happens is they start just throwing boom, boom. They just start throwing that jab. They're just going to go double jab. And then that's all they're going to do. They don't vary up that double jab. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the term throw punches in bunches, but that's what you want to do with your jab sometimes. Because think of it this way. If you're in the ring against an opponent and all you're going to do is you're going to get into your boxing stance, especially for you southpaws leading with your right hand, you're going to get into your boxing stance, your jab is going to be the first thing that you're going to lead with. And if all you're going to do is you're just going to do this, boom, boom, you're going to throw your double jab, that's great. But if this is all you're going to do is use your double jab, and then you don't put anything behind it, or maybe you just throw your double jab and then you follow with the left hand, you're going to become predictable. So what you want to do is you want to throw punches and bunches, especially with your jab. Because if you're a tall fighter like myself, and you're fighting against an aggressive fighter, someone that's going to constantly pressure you, they're going to constantly push you back, they're going to want to close the distance on you. I'm sorry, but 2 jabs are not going to work anymore. Because you need to keep your opponent at bay, especially an aggressive fighter. And if you're just going to throw 2 jabs out there, 2 quick jabs, and sometimes you may get behind them, sometimes you may not get behind them, it's not going to work. So what you want to start doing right off the get-go is, instead of just throwing 2 jabs, get in the habit of throwing 3 jabs, 4 jabs, 5 jabs, even 6 jabs. Because as you learn to vary up your jab, and you start putting your jab together where you're just not throwing 2 jabs, or 1 jab for that matter, you can use your jab to break your opponent's guard. Especially if you're fighting against a shorter or even a very aggressive fighter. The first line of defense is your jab. And as you're throwing your jab, you don't just want to stay in one position. And with the double jab, the problem what happens is a lot of people, especially beginners, when they throw their double jab, they just stay in one spot and they'll go like this. And then they stop. They don't know how to move out the way. And that's where the problem with the double jab starts, is that you're just moving forward with it. And as much as I love the double jab, throwing 3 jabs, 4 jabs, 5 jabs, 6 jabs is going to become much more effective, because you will learn how to not only keep your opponent at bay, especially an aggressive fighter, but you'll develop the stamina and the know-how of how to use your jab effectively. So you need to learn how to throw the jab in bunches. 3 jabs, 4 jabs, 5 jabs, 6 jabs. And you want to learn how to move from side to side with your jab. Especially if you're a southpaw fighting a right-handed fighter. You're going to have to move to the outside with your jab. And just going outside with 2 jabs may not be effective. And sometimes you're going to have to move to the inside with your jab. And throwing just 2 jabs won't be very effective, because your orthodox fighter is going to figure out that you're only throwing a double jab. Now, to break it down a little bit more, so for example, when you set up and you want to start throwing your double jab, you're just going to want to move forward. But when you start throwing 3 jabs, 4 jabs, 5 jabs, it gives you the ability to not only move forward, but angle off. So typically, if you're gonna, I'll go from the side perspective so you can see what I'm doing. So typically, you throw the double jab and you do this, jab, jab. Your hand doesn't come all the way back. And that's it. So the problem with that is, although it's very effective, against an aggressive fighter, it's not going to work. If you want to close the distance, sometimes 2 jabs ain't going to work. So that's where it is that you want to throw more than 2 jabs, because you not only want to close the distance against somebody that's moving away, but you also want to keep your aggressive fighter off of you. So that's the benefit of throwing more than 2 jabs, is when you're throwing multiple jabs, you can close the distance against someone that's moving away from you, and you can keep your aggressive fighter off of you. So in my boxing stance, I'm going to use my triple 4 jab, whatever it comes out right now, to close the distance. So I'm here, my opponent's moving back, 3 jabs, and now my opponent's going to move in on me. And now I move back, angled off. I didn't go straight back, you could see. Because if I'm fighting an aggressive fighter and I'm going to move back with 2 jabs, he's going to close the distance, take advantage of me, smother me, and land some punches. But if I'm moving off to an angle with 2, 3 jabs, I switch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so that's the beauty of the jab, is that you can use it to throw more than 2 jabs. The double jab is great, but if you become predictable and you only use your jab to set up a double jab, you'll become predictable, you'll get exposed and taken advantage of. The second thing about the jab is that too often fighters, boxers, only use the jab to set up their left hand, especially for your softballs. So The problem with only using your jab to set up your left hand is you become predictable, because you can use the jab to set up so many more things than just your rear hand. And for southpaws, if you're fighting against an orthodox fighter, if you're just using your jab to set up your left hand, you'll become predictable. And you can throw 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 jabs, however many you want to throw, build upon what we just learned in the step before, but use your jab to set up other combinations. Because if you're just using your jab, 2, 3 jabs at a time, or maybe it's a single jab and then you come in with your left hand, you're doing a disservice to yourself as a fighter, because your jab isn't just made to set up your left hand. It's made to set up other combinations. And so what I always loved doing when I fought was simple combination with the jab. I would throw 2 jabs and then come over with a long lead hook. And it works because most often when you throw a double jab, boom, boom, people are going to expect that left hand. But if you come over with the lead hook, it works out beautifully because you're breaking up the rhythm. You're doing something that most people don't do. And when you use your jab to set up other combinations, it becomes very effective. And I made a video that details 3 combinations or multiple combinations you can use off of the jab. The link is down below. But as you set up your combinations, you don't have to lead with your jab and then come back with your left hand. What you want to do is use your jab to set up a lead hook. Use your jab to go to the body. So I'm in my boxing stance, very slow. I'm going to shoot my jab, shift my weight, come here with the body shot, come up top, third punch, and then since I came up top, boom. And then I'll throw another stiff jab. 4-punch combination with your right hand, with your lead right hand for you softballs. And the beauty about that is, I didn't move that much. I didn't do that much. I just shifted my weight, went to the body, came up top, and then I used that last jab as a hammer. I used it because most likely, most people don't expect a jab coming up after a hook. So a simple combination you can do to vary up things with your jab is make sure that when you shoot up top, come down to the body, shift your weight, shoot up here, you want to dig to the body, come up top, and then boom, follow with a stiff jab to the outside of your orthodox fighter. Because your jab isn't just made to set up your left hand, you can use your jab to set up anything with your right hand. And so if I'm just tapping my jab, pop, pop, I'm going to go to the inside, through a hook, jab, boom, boom. And so that's the beauty of your jab, is that you don't necessarily need to use it to just set up your left hand. Use your jab to set up a hook. Use your jab to set up a body shot. Use your jab to set up another jab up top, come downstairs. So think about it. You'll throw a double jab, come downstairs, rip to the body. Guess what? Just rip to the body again, and then step back, boom, another jab. That's the beauty of the jab, is that you don't just want to use it to set up your left hand. Use it to set up a hook, a body shot, an uppercut, a half jab. Use your jab to do more than just set up your rear hand or your left hand for you softballs. The third thing that you can do with your jab to execute it more effectively and become less predictable is stop doing something. And I've been guilty with this for a long time. And you need to just stop headhunting with your jab. Your jab isn't just there to hit your opponent in the head. You need to vary up the jab. You need to go downstairs. And for me, when I fought, that's one of the downfalls of what I did is that I constantly went for the head with my jab. And the reason that I did that when I started boxing is because that's how we were scored. We were scored on a computer-based scoring system, long story, and that what you want to do is, as soon as you popped your opponent in the head and their head went back, you got a point for that. So that's why a lot of fighters in the 90s that came up through the amateur boxing system, that's what they did. They headhunted with their jab, because if you were able to pop your opponent's head back like this, boom, you got a point. And then that went all the way up into about 2012, and I think it was in 2016 that they got rid of the computer-based scoring system. So I was guilty of that. I would headhunt a lot with my jab because I used it to take advantage of the computer-based scoring system. If I could hit you in your head and your head went back, that's a scoring point for me in most cases. But what I started noticing is that that was great. I could pop your head back, but I became a little predictable. And so people would start slipping. And I'm like, shit, how am I going to pop their head back if my opponent's slipping? My jab all the time now. So what you need to start doing is, instead of just headhunting, you need to learn how to stab your opponent down to the body. Now, as I said, the jab is a multifaceted tool. It could be a hammer, it could be a scalpel, and it could be anything in between. It could also be a Rambo knife. And if you can use your jab as a knife to stab your opponent down to the body, you can eventually work on breaking their guard down. Because if you're just doing this with your jab, boom, I'm going to go up top, boom, I'm going to go up top. I think I'm going to go down to the stairs, but I'm scared. I'm going to go up top, go up top. Eventually, your opponent's just going to slip, or parry your jab, knock it out the way, or they'll close the distance on you. So what you want to start doing is, instead of just going up top, you want to step in downstairs. Step in with your jab. You want to stab your opponent with your jab. You want to drop down as you get down with your jab, cover yourself, you're protected, come back, and then maybe you want to go upstairs. But the more you start working on varying your jab instead of just headhunting and going to the body, eventually your opponent is going to start bringing their hands down. That's what you want to do. And as your opponent starts bringing their hands down, you can go upstairs and start popping them in their head. Now, one of the things that I learned towards the end of my boxing career was that once I started focusing on going to the body and then coming up top, I noticed that my opponents would pull out of range. They kind of figured out that I was going to use my jab to go up top. I was going to use my jab to go downstairs. And so they would start pulling out of range, and my jab wouldn't be as effective as it was anymore. So what I started doing to vary up the levels on my jab was I would wait for them to come in, and instead of trying to go upstairs to the head or go downstairs to the body, I would wait for my orthodox fighter to shoot a right hand, and I would simply just step into them. And as I stepped in, I didn't go down to the body, I didn't go to the head, I aimed for the chest. Because if I could stop my orthodox fighter as he's coming in with his right hand, with my jab, it's pretty nice. But I can also come over the top with the left hand. And that's the beauty of varying the levels on your jab. Because no matter what you do in boxing, you'll probably run into an opponent that is somewhat smarter than you. And they'll figure out that, oh, he's headhunting, so I'm going to knock all his punches down. Then you're going to go downstairs to the body, and your opponent's going to figure out, well, shit, he's throwing those punches down to the body, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep out of range from him. I'm going to start working on my feints to close the distance. And so now, your opponent that you've been able to manipulate, mess with his head, went back to his corner, his coach told him, listen, what's happening? The guy is tapping you up top with the head. Now he's going to the body with his jab. So if he's in there with a really good coach, the coach telling him, you need to keep out of his distance. You need to move away from him just enough so he can't land his jab up top or downstairs. And what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to close the distance with a punch. And so as your opponent adapted his game plan and started coming in with punches now, you need to take advantage of that and not go to the body, not go to the head, but stab them in their chest with your Rambo knife, aka your lead right jab. And as you start doing that, that's when you start building upon using your jab not only to go to the head, not only go to the body, but aim for the chest. Because if you can stop your opponent dead set in the chest, you can come with the left hand. I lied. I said that I was going to give you 3 ways you can execute the jab to become less predictable. Now for southpaws, one of the things that we're always told not to do is never move to the inside of our fighter, especially when we're fighting an orthodox fighter. We're told never move to our left, their right. Well, that's horseshit, bullshit. I've covered this in various other videos. So what you want to do as a southpaw to vary up your jab and become less predictable is use it as you move to the inside. And so as you move to the inside, you're going to have to think, normally when you throw your jab, you're here, boom, you turn it over, boom, you turn it over, all right? But when you're going to the inside, it's a little bit different because the momentum of your body is going inside like this. You're moving inside. You're not just stepping. You're moving inside. And so as you're moving inside, if you try and, step with your jab, it may work. But one of the things I learned from a couple Cuban fighters in the 90s was that they wouldn't just throw a jab like this when they're going to the inside. They would kind of flick their jab out like this, kind of like a backhand jab, but they would always land with the knuckles. So as a southpaw, if you're moving to the inside and you're throwing that jab, your hand is here. All right, your jab, your lead hand is coming from a little bit of a down position. Sometimes it could be down here, but I like to keep it up here. And that's what a lot of the Cuban fighters and the Russian fighters did, is that they would keep their hand here and just flip that jab out. Yes, it could be knocked down. Yes, it could be parried, but you're trying to bait your orthodox fighter. And why you're trying to bait your orthodox fighter is because you want them to throw that right hand. But you need to be very aware that this is somewhat of a dangerous move because you're exposed on this side, on the left side of your head. And if your orthodox fighter is confident enough or smart enough, they're going to shoot their right hand. And so as you're throwing your jab, you're flipping your jab out there, you're landing with the knuckles. As soon as you see that they're going to throw that right hand, you want to stop them dead in their tracks, come over with the left hand, and as you pull that left hand back, boom, boom, boom. You want to go to the outside. Because as a southpaw, you want to make sure that you're able to move to the left of your orthodox fighter and you want to move to the right of your orthodox fighter. And as you're working on that jab, moving to the outside and moving to the inside, you need to vary it up because sometimes a stiff jab as you're moving inside won't work all the time because it'll get knocked down. But if you come from a different level, maybe you're going to come from down here, your shoulders up, boom, you're going to shoot that jab, your opponent shoots that right hand, you come over the top, and then you come with your jab. That's the beauty of varying up your jab. I walked you through a few different ways you can execute your jab to become less predictable. Your jab is an important tool that you have in the boxing ring. It can do a lot of things, but you don't want to become predictable with your jab. You want to learn how to vary it. You want to learn how to set it up for more than just 2 punches. You want to throw it in bunches, throw 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 jabs at a time. You want to use your jab to not only set up your left hand, for you southpaws, but you want to use it to set up a body shot. You want to use it to set up a lead hook. You want to use it to set up a stiff jab, pull back, and then set up another body shot or a shot up top. Use your jab in variants so you don't become predictable and you don't create a rhythm. That's the beauty of the jab, is that it's a multifaceted tool and you want it to work to your advantage. So use your jab to become a better fighter by becoming less predictable. Execute on your jab so that you're not staying in one spot with it. That your double jabbing turns into triple jabbing. Your jab that you always use to set up your left hand now is being used to set up a hook or a body shot. And that instead of just moving to the outside of your orthodox fighter, you're moving to the inside with a well-timed jab to set up a left hand. I appreciate your time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts down below.